This July 31st special meeting of the Fairfield Board of Education is called to order. Present we have Ms. Pitko, Ms. Leeper, Mr. Dwyer, Mrs. Gerber, myself, Mrs. Vitale, Dr. Tracy, Mr. Asa, Ms. Jacobson, Mrs. Max Canelli, Mr. Peterson. I ask you to all please rise for the pledge. And Dr. Tracy, will you lead us in the pledge?
Sure. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming out on a rainy summer night. Welcome back, Dr. Tracy.
Thank you.
Nice to have you with us.
Still got my sticker from 2 years ago.
All right. It's a summer meeting, so I've been dared to be quick. Mr. Asa is really just putting it down that it's a special meeting and we got to move. So let's get to it. Approval of the recommended science textbooks for AP Biology and AP Chemistry. Recommended motion that the Board of Education approve the recommended science textbooks for AP Biology and AP Chemistry per the memo dated June 17th, 2019. Can I have a motion? Ms. Pitko, seconded by Mr. Dwyer. Any questions or discussions? Do you have anything?
Chief Academic Officer describing the process.
No, Mike.
Oh, sorry. You have a memo from Mr. Cummings, our Chief Academic Officer, describing the process leading to these recommendations. He's here tonight to answer questions if you have any.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Cummings? Mrs. Max Canelli?
And I will say this, these questions are more in the interest of any members of the public who are interested in this. So I'm perfectly satisfied with the recommendation of the staff, but just to Mr. Cummings, in quick order, when you talk about the books as being the most often recommended by other teachers in AP, could you explain the source of where the recommendation comes from?
Yes, good evening. Mike Cummings, Chief Academic Officer. The source of that recommendation comes from the AP Biology community of teachers.
Which, my point being, if anyone were looking to look it up, they could see.
It would come, well, it came from internal discussions among the teachers online with their colleagues from other schools. The recommendation sent to their online community.
Okay. And then regarding online, the details, because what we have heard so much from our recent curriculum reviews regards having authentic, up-to-date material at all times. And I was wondering if you could just give a couple of details of examples of what these online resources provide for the two books that won't be found in the textbook itself.
Okay, great. The online resource. Absolutely. The online resources for both the AP Bio and the AP Chemistry texts are aligned to AP study materials to help students prepare for the exams throughout the course of the year. So essentially questions that mimic those that they will encounter when they take the exams.
And by virtue of it being online, obviously, then it can be easily updated and we just continue our access.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Cummings. Seeing none, back to the board. Yes, it's a special meeting, but being this is a voting item, we'll go to the public. Any public comment on this motion? Seeing none, back to the board. All in favor? Ms. Pitko, Mrs. Leeper, Mr. Dwyer, Mrs. Gerber, Mrs. Vitale, Mr. Asa, Ms. Jacobson, Mrs. Max Canelli, Mr. Peterson. Motion passes 9-0. Okay, moving on. Update on Osborne Hill roof repair. You may recall in the spring, Dr. Jones shared that the Osborne Hill roof was sprouting some leaks. Staff was doing some repairs at that time. The roof is under warranty. The situation has worsened, so I'm going to ask Dr. Tracy to give us an update on that.
Okay, thank you. And our Executive Director for Operations, Mr. Papa George, is here as well to answer any questions that you might have. You do have a note from me from Monday, July 29, that pretty well brings you up to date on the situation. As the chairwoman mentioned, the leaking problem became progressively worse over the spring and into the early summer, to the point where it was decided that we really couldn't get through the next year without doing some serious repair work, not simply, buckets and leaks and things of that sort. The only two things I would add subsequent to my note before we take your questions, we have a schedule now with the Silktown Roofing Company that will begin on Monday. So I was able to inform Mr. Calabrese at the Recreation Department that we will not interfere with their camp, which ends this Friday. They will start on August 5th, and they expect to be done August 16, a full 10 days before our teachers come back. I did send a note out through Virtual Campus today to all the parents, alerting them to the fact that they will see work going on, they will smell work going on because it's a hot asphalt application, but that should be short-lived and over with by August 16. Finally, I got a communication yesterday from the attorney for the Garland Company expressing an interest in talking further with us about our rights under the warranty. So we'll have that conversation tomorrow and see what they have to offer. In the meantime, though, we have to get the work done, and that's what we're doing.
Any questions? Ms. Jacobson?
Just a couple of quick. Hello, is this on? Yep. Okay. My first question is does this project by any chance qualify for any state reimbursement under an emergency construction roof repair?
I don't believe so because they don't typically reimburse for repairs, but only for planned construction projects.
There is an emergency grant, though. I'm just curious if we've looked into it at all.
Angela, maybe you can shed some light on this.
I can look into that further with Sal. We had discussed construction repairs. They said no, but we can look into an emergency repair. I was unfamiliar with one,
Okay.
so I will
All right,
follow
good
up with
question.
Sal.
It's worth the phone call. Thank you.
Thank you. And the other question I have on this is I see that you've decided on where to take the funds from since we don't have this in the budget, obviously.
Right.
And I was just wondering if there was any other areas that we had thought about. I did express some concern about the AC consultant, so I was just curious how we landed on these particular areas.
These really were Mr. Papageorge's recommendations, and we've
Okay.
discussed it with the business office. So I suppose changes could be made as the year goes on, but those were the most likely sources, and we wanted to keep it within the facilities department if we could.
Okay.
And I think that the board will have, as we start the school year and see where we are with other line items in the budget, we can consult with Ms. Munsell and see where we are in a few months. And based on what we hear back from Garland, that might also affect the conversation, but we needed to act quickly. And the HVAC line item, as the board may recall, that was really, we can still put the requests for proposals out, we can still get the proposals back, and then take it from there. So it doesn't necessarily put a halt on it. It potentially might slow the process. It's my understanding right now that town purchasing is very busy with other just bid proposals right now. So it just seemed like that was a place that we could find the funding with the least hit at this particular point in time, but by no means is it an indication that we are back, putting HVAC upgrades on the back burner. Mr. Dwyer.
So I understand that the cost to us is $225,000, absent change orders that might be required because they find something, and that we might get compensation from our conversations with the Garland Company regarding their warranty requirements that might make that less, but that's not known at the moment.
That's correct, and there's a slight additional cost. We're also bringing in the Hoffman Company to monitor and document the work that gets done so that we can press our case with respect to the warranty if need be. And I think that is what, an additional about $3,000, Angeles?
Hoffman was $11,700 for that, and then the $2,000 to $3,000 that you're referring to is that the town purchasing department has asked us to
Performance
request a
bond.
performance bond from the roofing contractor. So that's the slight increase that we're anticipating.
So our total out-of-pocket cost will be about $240 if I have to add the 12 and the 3 and.
Right, that's right.
Okay, thank you.
And speaking of the town purchasing authority, I do want to thank the first selectman and the purchasing leaders over on the town side for working with us to get a bid waiver so that we could get this expedited and done before the kids come back.
Is there any concern, Mr. Papageorge, probably, with the weather slowing this project down?
Not at this time, because we haven't started yet. They're going to start ordering materials and start doing prep work next week, like Dr. Steve said. After that, there will be weather. If it rains while they're working, they cannot work, but they're not anticipating the full 10 days needed, so they're anticipating to have some weather days in there.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay. All right, and if anybody has questions after the meeting, just please forward them to me, and I will get them to Dr. Tracy or Mr. Papa George.
Thank you. Thanks, Andrew.
Okay, moving on, discussion and possible action on the election of the superintendent of schools for the Fairfield Public Schools. Okay, just to recap how we got to this agenda item, Dr. Jones notified the board at the end of January that she would be accepting a position as a superintendent of schools in Greenwich. Her last day here in Fairfield was June 30th. Upon hearing that news, the board quickly sprung into action and began our superintendent search. In February, we put out a request for proposals. We invited 4 search firms to come in and present to the board. After interviewing all 4, we retained Hazard Young Attia Associates. They went on retainer at the end of March and got right to work. In April, they conducted a number of focus groups within the community, a number of personal interviews with key stakeholders, and hosted an online survey to get community feedback on what we were looking for in our next superintendent. 1,097 people completed the online survey, and 154 people participated in the focus groups and interviews. Students were interviewed, teachers, administrators, community leaders, union representatives. So we think that we got a good cross-section of our community. The LEAP leadership profile was presented to the board and the community in a special meeting at the beginning of May, and that was used to recruit candidates and was used by the board as we began our interviews. Based on the feedback from the community, we wanted our next superintendent to create a climate of mutual trust, have a broad understanding of educational research and best practices, set high expectations for all students and staff, and plan to manage for the long-term financial health of the district. HYA followed up on 55 leads. We had 23 applicants for the position. They came from as far away as California. We captured applicants from 12 states. Guided by HYA, the board invited back 6 candidates for initial interviews. Those interviews started at the beginning of June. We spent hours with each candidate. It was a national search. From that candidate pool, we narrowed it down to have 3 back for a final round of interviews. These interviews got a tour of our school, the town, and met for another long round of interviews with the board. And from those 3 candidates, we narrowed it down to 1. And with that, I would like a motion to elect our next superintendent. The Fairfield Board of Education hereby moves to elect Michael Cummings as the Fairfield Superintendent of Schools pursuant to Connecticut General Statutes Sections 10-157 upon the condition that Mr. Cummings executes or has executed the contract of employment that is simultaneously approved by the Board of Education, and upon the condition that Mr. Cummings possesses all certifications and other requirements of the state of Connecticut to serve as the superintendent of schools. Should Mr. Cummings fail to possess said certifications and/or qualifications, the superintendent's contract shall be deemed null and void. The board further moves to delegate the board chair the authority to execute the contract of employment on behalf of the Board of Education. Can I have a motion? Sleeper, second. Mr. Asa. We usually don't discuss personnel matters, but I'm going to make an exception in this case, given hiring the chief executive officer of our school district is a big deal. So I'm going to let the board have a moment to speak. I'm going to start with Ms. Leeper, being that she made the motion.
It really is my pleasure to make the motion for Mr. Mike Cummings to be the next superintendent of Fairfield Public Schools. From our first interview with Mr. Cummings, as Mrs. Vitale described, a very competitive process, he immediately grabbed all of our attention and interest in hearing more about his vision for Fairfield should he become our superintendent. This wasn't surprising, given that from the very first time I met with Mr. Cummings, I was enthralled by his thoughtfulness and commitment to ensuring that all of the district's educational practices are student-centered. You can't walk away from a conversation with Mr. Cummings without being impressed by his extraordinary depth of knowledge of educational pedagogy, but also his very practical understanding of kids. His passion for students and learning came to life through the interview process. He not only left me inspired by his vision for the district, but he made me excited that my children will have the opportunity to attend Fairfield schools under his leadership. In talking with all of Mr. Cummings' references, every single one emphasized his exceptional listening skills, ability to build relationships, and his level of transparency around his decision-making process. Because Mr. Cummings executes his work in a fashion that is consistent with these values, he has built a tremendous amount of trust and respect from colleagues, teachers, and families. I have no hesitation in saying that with Mr. Cummings leading our district, both students and teachers will thrive. I feel honored that he made the decision to pursue this top job, to lead this district, and I am truly honored to put forward the motion that for Mike Cummings to become the next superintendent for Fairfield Public Schools.
Mr. Asa, you second?
Yes.
Anything to add to that?
Just a brief statement. I would like to say that I too am happy to support this motion to hire Mr. Cummings as our new superintendent. Hiring a new superintendent is one of, if not, the most important roles a Board of Education can be tasked with. I'm proud to say this board did not take this task lightly. As Mrs. Vitale mentioned, we received a lot of impressive applications from across the country, and throughout the process, Mr. Cummings continually rose to the top of the pack. He was not given any preferential treatment, being an internal candidate. In fact, I was very impressed with his performance throughout the entire process. I was not only intrigued by his qualifications and the answers he provided during the interviews, but also his deep knowledge of our district and clear, passionate vision to take us forward. One thing in particular that caught my attention during this process was Mr. Cummings' eagerness to plan ahead. His desire to not only create a budget annually, but to create a budget framework that looks out 5 years and directly ties to our district improvement plan and other factors that we've been discussing at this table for this year. Knowing that resources are what they are, Mr. Cummings has the knowledge and experience to work on preparing a long-term plan that meets and exceeds the needs of our students, continues to take this district forward as a model for the region, all while being fiscally responsible. I'm proud to second this motion and look forward to what is hopefully a long and successful tenure for Mr. Cummings.
Does anybody have anything different to add? If not, we can get right to a vote. Okay. I'm going to waive the reading. What? As read. I'm not going to read it again. The motion as read. All in favor? Ms. Pitko, Ms. Leeper, Mr. Dwyer, Mrs. Gerber, Mrs. Vitale, Mr. Asa, Mrs. Jacobson, Mrs. Maxicanelli, Mr. Peterson. Motion passes 9-0. Since the board has just allowed me the ability to execute the contract, I think I'm going to do just that. Let me see, is this the one? What? I have the signed one. Actually, while I find the signed one, I'm going to invite Mr. Cummings to come up and hopefully tell us that he's still interested in this job.
Yes.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you. I have a couple things I want to say, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
Sure. First of all, thank you. I'm just deeply honored and humbled to be the next superintendent of the Fairfield Public Schools. My greatest appreciation to the Board of Education for the demonstration of faith in my ability to work with them to lead this great school system. I did have a front row seat to the effort and care that they made in this search process. Participating in that process, I was confident they would select the best person for the position, and if it was not me, I trusted our school would be led well by whomever they chose. Of course, it was me, so congratulations on your wise choice. The Fairfield Public Schools are an exemplary school system, and I become superintendent as the beneficiary of the great work that has taken place before me. Challenges, of course, await us. I am entering my 34th year in public education. I bring to this role 34 years of interactions with exemplary teachers, wise administrators, committed and caring parents, and supportive community members and town officials. I have learned continually from working together with others, and I go forward with that same expectation and desire to keep learning and to grow. We know what works in classrooms. Together we have to make sure that what we know works actually happens. We have to listen to each other, learn from each other, support each other, and enjoy the great benefit of our mutual capacities and experiences. There are challenges to communicate more effectively, to build and maintain trust, and to ensure the best learning experiences for all students. The changes expected in our classrooms are unfamiliar to many of our own experiences in past roles. However, these changes, done well, will best serve the needs of our kids. Guided by our collective knowledge and the vast reservoir in this school system of belief in doing what is right for kids, we will make adjustments and we will navigate the financial and social challenges that confront us. With a constant focus on developing students to fulfillment of the district mission and the vision of the graduate, we will continue to grow and we will be successful. I am eager to get going, eager to be the superintendent of the Fairfield Public Schools. Thank you.
I found the contract. Now going to sign. Okay. Ta-da. I would like to thank the board for making the time to conduct this search as quickly as we did. We set a goal for ourselves to move as quickly as we possibly could, while also doing our due diligence. So thank you for your time and for the effort put in. I know it was a little bit crazy there, but we got it done, and I'm thrilled about the candidate, and I'm excited for the future. I'd also want to thank Mrs. Brown and Laura, because we could not have done it without you. It was an immense amount of planning, from setting up the focus groups to reserving the space and the meeting rooms and getting the letters out. The menus, I mean, the list goes on and on and on. So thank you. We couldn't have done it without you. So I appreciate all of your help and your support, and looking forward for the year ahead. Mr. Cummings' start date will be August 12th. So we are looking forward to that. We are somewhat sad to say goodbye to Dr. Tracy, but we're hoping that we can keep him around a little bit longer during the transition. We'll be meeting to discuss that. It has been very fun working with you these last few weeks, and appreciate your help and look forward to the month ahead. And with that, a motion to adjourn. Mr. Asa, second by Mrs. Cannelli, all in favor? We are adjourned.